Imagine this. It's Christmas Eve, 1914. You're deep in a muddy, freezing trench somewhere on the Western Front. This is World War I, the deadliest conflict humanity has ever known. For months, it's been nothing but the thunder of artillery, the rattle of machine guns, and the constant fear of death. The world has become a slaughterhouse, a vast, churned-up field of mud and bodies, where millions are dying for just a few inches of ground. Your generals, safe in their warm headquarters miles away, have given you a simple, brutal order: kill or be killed. Every man on the other side is your enemy, an abstract target to be eliminated. But tonight, something is different. Tonight, in the trenches of Flanders, thousands of soldiers, men from Britain, France, and Germany, are about to commit an act of mass disobedience. This isn't a violent mutiny with guns and bayonets. It's a mutiny of the heart, a rebellion sparked by a single, simple melody. It begins with a lone voice. A German soldier, perhaps homesick and weary of the endless violence, stands up and begins to sing. His voice, clear and pure, carries across the frozen, desolate wasteland of no man's land. The song he sings is still "No Hot, Silent Night." Across the way, in the British trenches, the soldiers stop what they're doing. They stop cleaning their rifles, they stop writing letters home, they stop shivering in the cold, and they just listen. For a moment, the war fades away, replaced by this hauntingly familiar carol. Then, tentatively at first, one British soldier starts to sing back in English. Soon, more join in, their voices blending with the German melody in a fragile, impromptu choir. The sound drifts up and down the front lines, a chorus of peace rising from the very heart of war. What happens next is one of the most surreal and moving moments in all of military history. A German soldier bravely lifts his head above the parapet. He's not holding a rifle. He's holding a small Christmas tree with lighted candles. He calls out in broken English, "Tommy, you know, shoot. We know, shoot." After a tense silence, a British soldier calls back, "Come on over, Fritz." Slowly, cautiously, men who had been trying to kill each other just hours before begin to climb out of their trenches. They are unarmed, their hands empty or held up in a gesture of peace. They don't charge or run to attack. They walk, almost hesitantly, towards the middle of no man's land, that terrifying expanse of churned earth and barbed wire that had symbolized only death. And there, in the frozen mud between the lines, they meet. Enemies shake hands. They look into each other's eyes and see not a monster, not a Hun or a Tommy, but another man, just like them. Young, scared, cold, and desperately missing home. The hatred and propaganda that had fueled the war for so long simply melts away in the face of this shared humanity. For one glorious, unbelievable day, the war is cancelled by the soldiers themselves. The truce spreads like wildfire along the front. Men who had been living on meager rations begin to share what little they have. The Germans, with their supposed superior supply lines, offer cigars, sausages, and schnapps. The British share their cigarettes, their tins of bully beef, and their plum pudding. They swap buttons from their uniforms as souvenirs. One soldier trades a leather belt for a jar of jam. They pull out worn photographs from their pockets and show each other pictures of their wives, their children, their families waiting for them back home. They talk about life before the war, about their jobs, their hopes, their dreams. For these few hours, they are not soldiers. They are farmers, barbers, clerks, and factory workers, united by a common longing for peace. One of the most poignant acts of this truce was the burying of the dead. Together, British and German soldiers ventured into no man's land to recover the bodies of their fallen comrades, who had lain there for weeks. They dug graves in the frozen earth and held joint services side by side. A German officer might read a psalm from the Bible, followed by an English chaplain. They mourned together, paying respect not to enemies, but to fellow men who had paid the ultimate price. In that shared grief, the absurdity of their conflict became painfully clear. And then, as the story goes, the mood shifted from somber to joyful. Someone, a Scot perhaps, produced a deflated football from his pack and kicked it into the middle of the crowd. What happened next is the stuff of legend. An impromptu soccer match broke out right there in the middle of the battlefield. Coats were used for goalposts. Germans against the British. Fritz versus Tommy. They laughed and cheered, slipping and sliding on the icy ground where artillery shells usually exploded. Can you imagine it? The sheer, wonderful absurdity of playing a game of soccer in the very place designed for killing. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated life in the midst of death. But this beautiful, spontaneous peace was a dangerous thing. It was a threat to the very structure of the war. Back at high command, the generals on both sides were furious. They were terrified. Their entire war effort was built on the idea that the enemy was a subhuman monster that had to be destroyed. What would happen if their soldiers realized that the men in the opposing trenches were not monsters, but ordinary people just like them? The war would collapse. Men would refuse to fight. The orders that came down were swift and severe. Fraternization with the enemy is treason, punishable by death. Any soldier caught attempting to communicate with the other side would be court-martialed and shot. To enforce this, artillery commanders were ordered to start firing barrages immediately, targeting the areas where the truces were happening. The deafening roar of the guns was meant to drown out the carols and shatter the fragile peace. As Christmas Day drew to a close, the soldiers knew their time was up. They shared one last handshake, one last cigarette. Some accounts say they exchanged home addresses, promising to meet up after the war was over, if they survived. Then, reluctantly, they returned to their respective trenches, to their holes in the ground. The magic was over. The war was back on. The next morning, the whistles blew. The sergeants screamed the orders to go over the top. The men were forced to pick up their rifles again. This time, they weren't aiming at faceless enemies. They were aiming at the men they had shared songs and chocolate with. They were aiming at the friends they had just made. Many soldiers reportedly fired their first shots high, intentionally missing, as a final, desperate act of respect. But the war machine was relentless. The killing resumed. The Christmas truce of 1914 was a brief, flickering candle of humanity in the immense darkness of a war that would go on to consume an entire generation. It was a moment when the common soldiers, the pawns in the game, declared their own peace. It never happened on that scale again. The generals made sure of it. The war became even more brutal and impersonal. But the story of that one day lives on. It's a timeless whisper from the past, a powerful reminder that our shared humanity is far stronger than any flag or uniform that seeks to divide us. It proves that even in the deepest, darkest pits of hell, peace is possible. It's a testament to the fact that when left to their own devices, ordinary people don't want to hate. They want to connect. They want to sing. And maybe, just maybe, they want to play a game of soccer. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more timeless whispers. See you next time.